So we have a couple examples. What's going on? Do you have a note sheet?
Yep, I did.
Your binder's on the floor.
Yeah.
Andrew, not necessary. Okay. And Nick, computer away, please, while we go through examples. If you don't have your factor sheet out, that could be helpful to have your gold factor sheet out always, every day. All right. So as I said, today we are factoring using the method reverse FOIL. So what we had been working with most recently, but we are using it to solve quadratic equations. So a few things to review. Again, and make sure you understand the reason why these continue to be on your note sheets is probably because they're important. So it's important for you to know what it means to factor. So again, factoring, expressing a polynomial as a product of monomials and polynomials. Then zero product property is what we use to solve quadratic equations, and that says if the product of two factors is 0, then at least one of the factors must be 0. So that's where you're setting each factor equal to 0 and solving. And then just a reminder, to solve a quadratic equation, you need to know what a quadratic equation is. So it's an equation that's in this form. So what makes it quadratic is the highest power on x is 2. You have an x squared in your equation. The degree is 2. And then a just can't be 0 because you need to have the x squared there. So I have, by these problems, again, your 4 steps. So you saw these 4 steps before. It's just now our method for factoring is different. So to solve a quadratic equation, step 1. Step 1 is to get your equation equal to 0. In example 1, this is already done. Okay, so step 1 is already done. One side of our equation is already equal to 0. If it wasn't, that would be our first step. Step 2 is to then factor the other side. So I have to factor the x squared plus 8x plus 12. Our method of factoring in here is using the reverse FOIL, so that x method, the x box method. So I'm going to do that down here just so my work for solving can be over here. So if you make the x, remember on top goes what you're multiplying to, on the bottom is what you're adding to. So from our x squared plus 8x plus 12, what are we multiplying to here on the top? Nadia? 12x squared. You take the x squared times the 12. What are you adding to? The 8x. Okay, so this factoring part, this is what you've already done, what we've been practicing. I know we started doing this last week. We did it Tuesday and Wednesday. All right, so you are looking, this is where your gold factor sheet can be helpful. So two numbers that multiply to positive 12 and add to 8. Did you have it, Michael? Never mind? Okay. Nick? Yeah, so 2 times 6 is 12. 2 plus 6 is 8. So 2x and 6x. Okay, and then you set up the box. So upper left, what goes here? The x squared, the first term. Then the 2x and 6x. That's why you're making the x here, so you can find that diagonal. So 2x goes in one, 6x goes in the other. And then not 0, the 12, yes. And again, you're not using the 8x from the equation because the 8x is what your 2x and 6x add to. So that's, you're splitting 8 into 2 plus 6. Then cross the rows, down the columns, pull out the GCFs. Andrew? On this, well, okay, he might have, because you could have these switched. So if I go down my columns, I would have x and 2. And then on the other one, what would you have? Yep, x and 6. All right, so then what is the factored form? Because again, this is the work to lead to it. This isn't the answer for the factored form. So what's the factored form? How would I write it? Cassie? Yes, so x plus 6 in one parentheses times x plus 2 in the other parentheses. And then I still have my equals 0. Because remember, I'm solving. So this is where you stopped before because you were just asked to factor. This is asking you to solve. So I've done, or step 1 was already done for us. I just did step 2. So now because I have it factored and it's equal to 0, this is now using the zero product property. I can set both of my factors equal to 0. X plus 6 is a factor, x plus 2 is a factor. So I would have x plus 6 could equal 0, or x plus 2 could equal 0. And then you solve these two equations for x. So if I have x plus 6 equals 0, how do I solve for x? Yeah, subtract 6. So then I would get one solution is x equals negative 6, or this one I would subtract 2. Yep, so my two answers, x equals negative 6 or x equals negative 2. Okay, so if you're looking off to the side here, the first step, step 1, getting one side to 0, that was already done. Step 2 was factoring, so we really kind of did step 2 down here and then wrote our factored form up here. Step 3 was setting each factor equal to 0 and solving, and then step 4 is listing your solutions. So those are your 4 steps. And again, one or maybe a couple of the steps might already be done. Questions on that one? Okay, I'm actually going to, I want to look at the example on the back. So I'm going to skip over example 2 and look at example 3. All of these examples are asking you to do the same thing, and I just want to make sure you have more time to work so I can answer more individual questions. So I'm going to flip this. Let's look at equation 3. This one is x squared minus 3x equals 10. So if step 1 is to get the equation equal to 0, I don't have 0, so now I have to do step 1. Nadia? Yes. Okay, so this left side, Ryan, do you need a pencil? Okay, left side is x squared minus 3x minus 10. And then I have equals 0. Okay, so that's my step 1. I got one side equal to 0. Step 2 now is to factor the x squared minus 3x minus 10. So if I set up my x, On the top, what am I multiplying to? Yep, negative 10x squared. On the bottom, negative 3x. And then remember, when you multiply to a negative number, one is negative, one is positive. So what are two numbers that multiply to negative 10 and add to negative 3? Close. Negative 5x and then positive 2x. Yeah, so Kathy first said negative 2 and 5. Those would add to positive 3. So just by switching the signs, you get negative 3. Okay, so we have those two. Now set up the box. What do we put in the top left box? X squared. Then I have in one box negative 5x, in one box positive 2x, and then in the last box, negative 10. So going across, we'll go across the rows first. X squared and negative 5x. Take out the x. GCF. 2x and negative 10. 2. Do I keep it positive 2 or is it negative 2? Why do I keep it positive? Yes, the first in the row, the first one is positive, so it is positive 2. Then down the columns, x squared and 2x, x, negative 5x and negative 10. That would be negative 5 because the first one in the column is negative. So my factored form up here, one parenthesis, one factor is x plus 2 times the other is x minus 5. And then I still have the equal 0. Okay, so that's step 2. And this is the work down here for how we factored it. Step 3, set each factor equal to 0 and solve each equation. So this means x plus 2 is equal to 0 or x minus 5 is equal to 0. Yep, so the first one I'd subtract 2. X equals negative 2 or and x would equal 5. So step 4, those are my two solutions. Okay, and you don't have to number your steps. I'm numbering them so when you look back at this, if you also copy that down, you can correlate the number to the step as you see it. Now, if you look below that, and we had talked about this before, but it says you can check your solutions by substituting them into the original equation. So I just want to show you the checked number 3 because there's some on the assignment that I am asking you to show your check. Not that you have to check all of them, however you can, because then you know if you have the answers right. So if I were to check, I have to check them separately. So let me first check x equals negative 2. So I'm going to start off with my original equation. So how it was typed on the paper. So x squared minus 3x equals 10. And I replace all of the x's with negative 2 to make sure that both sides then equal 10. So here I'd have negative 2 squared and then minus 3 times negative 2. And I'm checking to make sure that that actually equals positive 10. So I just kind of put a question mark above the equal sign because right now I have to see, that's what I'm checking. So what is negative 2 squared? Not negative 4, positive 4. So remember, if you are typing into a calculator, because I realize if you have a calculator like this one or you're using one of mine, if I just type in negative 2 squared, no parentheses, it tells me negative 4. But I know that this is really -2 times -2, which should be +4. So what the calculator is doing here is this is the opposite of 2 squared, which 2 squared is 4, so the opposite is negative. If I want -2 squared, I have to put -2 in parentheses and then square it to see that it's +4. So this is 4. And then here if I have -3 and -2, if I multiply -3 and -2, what is that? What is -3 times -2? +6. And then what is 4 plus 6? 10. So I do get 10 equals 10. That means -2 is a correct answer. So without asking me, you already know that -2, that answer is right. And then you would have to do that for both. So then I would also check my other answer was 5. So again, start out with x squared minus 3x equals 10, and now replace the x's with 5's. So I'd have 5 squared minus 3 times 5. Does that equal 10? What is 5 squared? 25. And then I have minus 3 times 5. So a -3 times 5 is -15. So I have 25 minus 15, and that is 10. So that also checks out. Okay, so that tells me my two answers are right. And that could just be done in a calculator too. I showed the steps for solving it, but once you have it set up, it could just be typing in your calculator to make sure it's right. And then if it doesn't work out, the goal is not that you say, oh, my answer is wrong, I'm going to move on to the next problem. The goal is that you would try to figure out why it's wrong.